Yo, welcome to the Heat Speakers, another awesome show, guys. We got a fun-filled, amazing show today, guys.
Welcome,
How you doing,
welcome.
Mark? How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a little hot outside.
A little bit.
Feels better in here. We got a nice setup, but I don't think the heat's going to stop today because we got ourselves
Man.
a guest.
Yes, we
We got
do.
ourselves a guest today that is
We got to bring
younger
him
than both of us.
younger than
Although I'm
my
gonna check the ID.
daughter.
I'm going to check the ID because this guy is doing things over here. He has to have at least another 20 years on this earth that we don't
Tell
know
me,
about.
do you guys are in for something today, guys? He's younger than my daughter. Can you believe that? That just dates me now. I feel like an old man, but.
They may be able to believe it, but by the end of this episode, they're not going to be able to. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir? Tell us your name and what you got going on.
Yes, sir. My name is Elijah Hernandez. I am the executive director of Shine for Education, a nonprofit organization I began working on when I was 14 years old. Since then, I've taught 1,000 kids with career-based curriculum that me and my team created ourselves.
The youth helping the
Man.
youth is how it started.
And
You are far from the youth now, man.
he's just 21 years old.
Just 21 years old.
21 years
Yeah,
old, going
yeah.
strong. 7 years now doing this.
Yeah,
Man, fulfilling, I'm sure.
absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating to be able to track something doing the same thing over the course of 7 years. I can look back at TV interviews I was doing at 15 years old, and I can see, oh, I like what I was doing there, but I changed that, and now I'm doing what I do now. You know what I mean? It's
That growth.
And that's what I try with my educational programs. The idea is to focus on a variety of different careers over the course of their entire education. So they have something to keep them safe and also focusing on what they want to do with their lives after school every day, from elementary all the way to high school. And I think that idea is really interesting. In 10 years after, I've taught over, X amount of kids, they'll be able to see, oh, wow, I got to personally see my own development as a writer over the course from elementary all the way to high school,
So how old were you when you started? What's the name of your foundation first, and how old were you when you started it?
The name of my organization is Shine for Education.
Okay.
And the work in regards to building my own educational programs, that started when I was 14. But being so young, I didn't know how to incorporate it as a nonprofit, have what's called a 501c3 designation, which means we are, you can donate to us and you can get a tax break, just to let you guys know.
Yeah,
Wow. there you go.
But none of that I knew at the time. But I consider it kind of part of the same era of my life. I was 14 years old when I joined a robotics program over at Buchanan High. Born and raised in Fresno, but I went to school in Clovis Unified. And that gave me a certain level of insight in regards to what was available at home against what was available to this amazing school district that I was a part of. So that informed me how very little STEM education I'd ever gotten up to that point, right? A lot of my teammates, they had come, they were Clovis Unified, born and bred, right? So they had done robotics all throughout, from starting at elementary, doing Lego blocks, doing those types of programs.
Right.
And I felt myself very behind the curb, right? I felt I was having to catch up for a lot of experience that I just never had. I was never given the opportunity to have. So what I started doing was making my own educational curriculum stylized on the idea of how can I bring these program concepts without having to have schools or students pay some ridiculous fee to be able to be a part of it. In regards to STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the costs that can go into even a high school robotics team, that's starting at least $25,000, right?
Gotcha.
And if you're at a level like my team was, where we were going to the World Championship, flying all the way out to Houston, competing against teams all around the world, you're looking at $100,000 that you and your team are having to fundraise every year.
Gotcha.
So that really informed my decision on, hey, I can't immediately do that at 14 years old, right?
Right.
How can I put together a program that can get kids interested, and then we can build from there. Just again, giving them the opportunity, just starting it off as simple as that. And then of course, as we build more programs, it evolves.
So, okay. So what I'm hearing is that you took the exposure to these programs that you before had no exposure to.
Yes.
And you bridged the gap between those who still had no exposure to them by bringing the educational courses to them, by social media? Like, how did that bridge? And you knew you wanted to do it. You knew. Wow, there's a whole other world here, and I know some people that have no idea that this world exists.
Yeah.
So, what was your first step to building that bridge between those who did not have the opportunity and the material that you're trying to get the youth to learn here?
Man, it's really surreal thinking about it. My first, I would say, legitimate educational program where it was fully organized. It wasn't a one-off situation. It was called a STEAM workshop: science, technology, engineering, and including arts into that. Mathematics workshop. We would develop curriculum. My friends, who are also on the robotics team, just different coding activities to best explain to students, hey, coding isn't just this magical world of numbers that you're typing into a computer. It's a language, really. You just have to understand what the alphabet is for coding.
Gotcha.
Right? So I remember we developed our first activity. It was called, I believe we named it Bird Search, where over the course of the game we had a grid on this big old carpet that we would roll out for students. And the idea, you'd have 4 teams competing against each other, and they had to put together lines of code to be able to grab different items on the board. So it was already introducing them to the idea and the concept, hey, the tools are already at your hands. It's just now understanding you have to put this sentence together with that sentence to create your desired outcome.
Gotcha.
So we would just go from school to school to school. We were like a mini circus.
Yeah.
I would contact the principal of an elementary school, middle school, and whatnot, and say, hey, I have a little band of me and my friends. Can we come out to your elementary school and teach? And that started with one school, which ended up becoming another school, another school, another school. I mean, by the time I was 17 years old, I had taught a bit over 1,000 students.
Wow.
At every single elementary school in Clovis Unified, across Fresno Unified, and what ended up being kind of my pinnacle with that specific project, I ended up teaching 7,000 miles away in the villages of Laos.
Wow. Well, okay, so we're going to get into that later. I know we talked a little bit off screen about your travels around the world, but going back to starting with one supervisor or teacher or superintendent and going from school to school, what did that level of participation look like in the beginning? And was there one school in particular that maybe these kids were a little bit more enthusiastic about it than others that made you guys kind of feel like we're onto something here?
It's hard to say, because a lot of it I was learning as well. It's hard to say what is a successful educational program when you're 16 years old.
Gotcha.
You're learning that as you go. I just had a commitment that I wanted to teach as many kids as I possibly could,
Regardless of participation.
Yeah, regardless.
If you were speaking to one, even though there was 20 there, if only one, everybody was like this, and there was one into it. You're going.
Yeah, and I think it's a big part of community organizing, right? There was points where it was just me teaching the programs. Then it grew into teams. On the robotics team, I was leading a bit over 100 kids on a single team.
Wow.
And then being able to designate them to certain days and whatnot. That's a bit of the reality. You never know what the true numbers of the program are going to be until it actually happens. You just have to have faith in the mission that you're seeking to complete. And that was, for me, delivering as much exposure to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics as I possibly could.
So that's always been like a priority for you, exposing
Yes.
all of this different curriculum, all this different way of thinking, all of these opportunities that are available, to people just across town. On the other side of town, these opportunities are available. But if you go 15 miles south, there's nothing there. So the whole point was exposure in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays, I would say a lot of the exposure I'm now taking action on with further in-depth curriculum. But at the time, I didn't know the scale at which I could take it to.
Gotcha.
I mentioned I didn't even know what a nonprofit was. A lot of what I do now, it's just putting official titles on what I was already thinking of as a kid.
Right.
I couldn't describe to you a lot of these business dealings I was having as a kid.
Right.
I couldn't imagine it. I didn't know this is something that people could even get paid to do, right?
Right.
So, again, a lot of it has been a really engaging learning process on how I could, again, best fulfill this mission of exposure and now taking action on that.
Gotcha. Now, before we go further in your story, a lot of this happened in your youth, right?
Yes.
what kind of skill set did you find in yourself, or what prepared you for something like that? Or were you just completely unprepared and learned 100% on the road, or did you know that there was a skill set in you that would allow you to not only take on this mission but grow it to the way that you did?
Yeah, I would say a big part. I think the biggest hurdle to tackle is public speaking, interacting with people, being on the stage when the pressure's all on you, and you're expected to take on a certain load, right? I was in athletics all the way up to my freshman year. I did cross country. I mean, for a short time, I was actually nationally ranked.
Really?
Yeah, in the state.
Oh shoot!
Yeah, odds are you can look at my name, you might find some old middle school freshman records, right?
Okay.
But I quit that to get into what I do now. But even besides that, I was doing choir, doing solos on stage, singing, theater, even a lot of situations where I was given a certain task, a certain responsibility to be able to carry on the weight of a production, or carry the weight of a team in regards to scoring different points, right? And a lot of that gave me the courage to at least go out there. But everything else from there, I mean, I couldn't have told you I was going to be learning about business plans. Had no idea what that was going into my freshman year.
On-the-job training then.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Especially with teaching, working with kids. I mean, I have 3 younger siblings, but it's an entirely different type of setting when you're teaching kids. I remember, one of the funny stories I think about a lot. I taught up to 500 elementary student kids before I first decided I wanted to teach middle school students. Okay. And I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. I thought this was going to be easy. I'm like, hey, I already taught all these kids. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's not so easy. Very, very different.
Different mindsets?
Different attitude.
A
lot of attitude. So, things like that, I was just learning right then and there on the job. And of course, you live and learn.
How many times did you want to flip from being a teacher to being a big brother and trying to correct some of this behavior in these middle school classes that I'm sure you were getting?
Man, too many to count.
Too many to count. Yeah, I can relate to that, man. I actually met Rich there. We were both probation. We were both probation, and we were both working with juveniles. And when I started there, I was 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
So some of the kids that were there were 18, and the ones that did not quite have the mental capacity to be shipped off to a jail, they stayed. So some of them were 19. So I was in an authority position, just 2 or 3 years older than some of these kids. So it was very much like you're not an officer. You're like a brother, and I want to fight a brother. I don't want to fight an officer, but I'll fight a brother. So it was difficult. There was a lot of resistance there. It posed kind of like the same thing. Like, these guys are not listening to me. It's because they view me as a big brother right now, or because I'm a teacher right now, or I'm an officer right now. But so I can kind of relate to that a little bit. Running into those pressures as you start to educate the older kids, running into attitude problems.
Yeah, and not even with students, and although it isn't as big of a deal, but me being this young and managing staff, teams of volunteers that are all within the same age range as me as well. I'm only 21, some of these volunteers I actually ended up teaching in programs, were over, I was overseeing them as mentors. I've been doing it for that long.
Right.
I've gotten to interact with some of these students, I taught with, and interact with them as kind of professionals, as adults, so that is also another hurdle. How do you maintain a certain type of professionalism?
Yeah.
But also while maintaining the authenticity for which they're following you from. These college students aren't following me because I'm presenting them some $1 million idea. They follow me because they believe in me, and I'm able to speak to them in a language they understand.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
It's a balance, between being professional while also being honest with who you are.
Gotcha.
I can't go out all the time in the suit and tie, right? There's times I'll unbutton, the top button. I'll go
loosen up a little bit.
loosen up, because that's why people have given me opportunities. This honesty to say, hey, I can tell you what we figured out, what we haven't figured out. I can also tell you how we're going to get there. This is not something that happens overnight. Being really forthcoming to everyone that's a part of my operation in regards to the roadmap that we're following.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you helped a lot of youth here, local communities.
Yeah.
Safe to say Central Valley is home for you. And you
Absolutely.
very much view it that way and portray it in your work. You mentioned you've been to other places in this world.
Yeah,
And it stemmed from this. And it stemmed from STEM.
absolutely.
Okay.
Traveling around the world a little bit.
Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that, man. How were those travels like? Where was the first place you went? And how effective was your program out there?
Yeah, so when I was 17 years old, I taught up to maybe 700, 800 kids at the time. It was my senior year, so I'd
All
already...
local at this point.
Yeah, all local. at
What
that
high school
point.
was it?
That the school at which I taught?
Or what was the school that you graduated from?
Oh, school I graduated at, Buchanan High.
Buchanan. Okay.
Over in Clovis
Okay.
Unified. Yeah. So at that point, it had gained a certain level of attraction from different people in positions of authority, superintendents, local nonprofits who had their own missions. So I was invited actually to travel 7,000 miles out to Laos. A nonprofit locally, they do their own type of missions to be able to give back to their Hmong and Lao communities out there. And they reached out to me. Initially, what it was going to be was me shipping my curriculum out, and they were going to translate it and teach it there. And they said, why just settle for that when bring over the person who made it?
Bring the man.
Yeah.
How did
So-
they even hear about you? Like, how does somewhere in Laos find out about Elijah and what you're doing?
Well, they have connections locally. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but Laos was Fresno was a big immigration spot for a lot of
Right.
the Hmong and Lao
Hmong,
community
right.
post Vietnam War. So there's a lot of strong ties between here in the
That's why
Central
New Year
Valley.
is here.
Right.
Exactly. You know, we are
community here.
a big space for the.
I believe
the
in
Hmong
Minnesota there's a big community there
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, there is
That's
as well.
another one, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just by virtue of those local connections of people who had already scouted us here, and at that point had already been in a couple TV interviews for the work I was doing at
Like-
that point.
Tell us more.
In regards to the TV interviews,
Hey, you've done so much in this 21 years. It's so amazing. But yeah, carry on. Go ahead.
yeah. So I imagine I was probably at the time doing some promo in regards to my current curriculum, but also my robotics team at large. You know,
Okay.
for the projects I was doing at the time, we were actually winning awards because there's a category for that in the robotics league I was in, where they would say, hey, whichever team's doing the most for their community, we will bring you out to the championship as well, not just for winning the robotics aspect of it. So, you know, I was leading the efforts to get us out there. So there's a bit of promo involved with that. But eventually they would end up hearing about us. They said, hey, can you fundraise about, what was it, maybe $7,000 in 2-3 months to go out with us? They told me about this maybe July, and we were leaving in November, but we had to have our tickets in October. So, you know, immediately I started
ticking.
a big social media campaign. And I knew how rare of a situation that was, you know, for someone like me, you know, 17 years old at the time, to, I mean, not just take myself and my curriculum, but take teammates of mine. It was not just fundraising for me. I fundraised for someone who helped me flesh out this curriculum. I was taking out my dad as a chaperone, and I had to fundraise for that. You know, I had to earn it.
Gotcha.
You know, but I understood the magnitude of what that meant, not just for the work I was doing at the time, but for the kids out there who never had access to that.
As a 17-year-old, how are you fundraising, man? I'm just
The internet.
internet's power of the internet. Like, tell us more about that. Like, for someone that may be looking to do that out there, like, whether it's a kid, a young teenager, or an adult.
You know, being older, I might go about that a bit differently. Nowadays, you know, I do a lot more networking, connecting with people, understanding how the grant system works, how to get funding through the standard established professional way.
Sure.
But really, I just did, I posted online 24/7, telling people about my mission, showcasing the work I'd already done up to that point. You know, I was taking photos all the time. I'll be able to send them over to you of me at 16, going from school to school, teaching these kids, you know, no facial hair, baby face.
That's amazing.
You know, it really was as simple as that. standing outside of gas stations, saying, "Hey, this is what I want to do. Come,
Really?
donate."
A kid with a passion and a vision, man. A kid, so much.
I mean, because I didn't know any other way. When I was fundraising for my cross country team, a little small project right there. My mom took me out to the Selma gas station with a box of chocolates and said, "Hey, here you go." Because that's all we know.
Right. That's it.
We have no other exposure to what other opportunities there are for program funding.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You just have to, sometimes life gives you opportunity and you're either going to force your way there or not.
Very true.
100%, man. I like that, man. Just gonna. So, how important was your dad in your mom and dad in helping you get to the level that you're at right now?
Very much. They gave me the opportunity and space to be able to succeed in the first place. The whole reason my family's more so from the Selma, Kingsburg area. Mm-hmm. They moved all the way out to Fresno just to give me these types of opportunities. But there's the whole aspect that I was the first to do them. It's hard for them to inform me on what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
It was very much a first generation experience.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And, again, also being a minority in this space. There's not too many other people who can say, too many people in the Latin community who at 17 can say they've done what I've done.
Sure.
So it's hard for me to know, hey, who do I go to?
Right.
And of course now I know those people, but again, 17, they don't tell you. There's no book for it.
There's no book. No.
You have to study the game. You have to be aware of your surroundings. That's always, I consider myself, despite of all the work I've done up to this point, kind of an internal student.
Man, yeah, that's how you need to view yourself. That's, now, not just you specifically,
Yeah.
but anybody out there, don't let that curiosity rest.
Mm-hmm.
You should always be, willing to learn, wanting to learn. There's so much out there. You never know it all.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know, and the smaller and smaller you make that bucket, the more whatever you want to be, the more intelligent you want to be, the more successful in business, the better father you want to be, the better brother or sister you want to be. All comes from continuing to learn.
That's it. Yeah. Every day. We learn every day. I don't know if you guys got into it. I had to step out for a second. Did you talk about what was the reason, the passion, the motivation for him? What started him on this journey? Did you guys get into that already? Okay.
Yeah.
About his childhood and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. About him.
I'm sorry, guys. I had to
him
step
being
out.
Exposed to. Yeah. He was talking about him. Exposed.
Yeah. What got him to the point to where he's at?
But a fun fact about that, I probably wouldn't have started that journey. I was a cross country runner at the time. I got a knee injury that put me in a wheelchair, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So in between that time, that's when I picked up all of this. And it's crazy to think about.
So you had the time on your hand. So you were what was it? Did you just pick up books? Did you just research? What did you do?
Well, I joined a local robotics program, and then I sort of expanded on it based on my own skill set. The idea of I wanted to give back to my community, and there was resistance to that at the time. Not all of my classmates or teammates came from the same background I came.
Right.
I remember someone telling me. I must have been 15 or 16. When I told them, hey, I want to do a program in Fresno. I'd taught already a lot of the curriculum in Clovis Unified. I wanted to go more closer to where I grew up, right? Mm-hmm. And I was told that do kids even like that type of stuff over there? And it was something I've mentioned before. This idea that there's a lot of resources and opportunity being gatekept from these low-income communities because there's preconceived notions that we wouldn't like it if we were given the opportunity. So why even give them the opportunity in the first place?
Is it that, or is it the funding? They just don't have the funds in those lower income communities and those schools to bring in those programs. Well,
having worked on the administrative end,
sure,
there is certainly funding for it.
There is funding for
it. But there's also
a
big part of who's going to run it. Who's the talent that's actually going to come to Fresno and run these programs? And that's why I've succeeded in a large part is because I want to stay in Fresno. I want to be local.
Sure.
I will go to the Reedleys. I will go to the Fowlers. I will go to the Selmas. That's where I grew up. That's where I love, There's a lot of other established organizations, around the nation, right, that could probably do it. But again, it's the idea.
It's going to take that person to actually want to do it. To stand up. And that's where we're blessing to have you as one of the leaders.
On top of somebody who wants to do it, with somebody who actually cares about the community they're doing it in.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it just takes that passion, that level of dedication.
And to stick with
to a
it,
whole nother level.
consistency, and just fight through it and build the connections and relationships like you did.
You
So
know, I was blessed enough to be able to, my old elementary school, Tarpey Elementary, I started the first science program they had ever had since I actually attended the school in preschool and
Look
kindergarten.
at that, man.
no way.
You know, so again, there are schools that are open to these opportunities, but again, it's who's going to stand up and do it, you know, because it is work. It takes time to understand how do you develop curriculum. Are you willing to experiment with it? How are you going to source it? And I mean, the funding part of it is an aspect as well, but also understanding, hey, I probably shouldn't just waste the $1,000 out of my budget within 1 month. I should
Exactly.
actually stretch that out. You know, there's
Right.
a lot of business that goes into that. You know, there's a lot of, you know, how I run my team, you know, I have a lot of great people who like working with kids, but they don't know how to develop the curriculum. They don't know how to do the business of it. So we segment that out, you know, leaving that, you know, because sometimes there's someone who knows how to develop great curriculum, but either they don't have the time or just they aren't into working with kids.
Right.
But then there's an entire segment of people that
That
love
love to-
working with kids.
Make perfect match right
Yeah,
there.
exactly. You know, and it's understanding that philosophy, you know, that not everyone is meant for, you don't need to have everything in everyone, right?
Oh, absolutely.
There's just some people that they really like this one thing and you have to put them in positions to succeed. Okay? Because if you start expecting everything out of someone, you're putting them in a position to fail.
Right.
Really.
You're setting them up to fail.
Yeah, unless they are wanting to push forward with that mission as a personal growth, you know, you have to. It's a two-way street, you know. I think a lot of nonprofits, right? There is this, I think this concept that okay, because we're doing a good thing, it's like let's burn ourselves out as much as possible to reach this end goal. But you know, as an executive director, I have to not only oversee the students who are receiving the program, but I also have to oversee the needs of the staff, you know, because I need the staff more than the staff needs me, you know.
Look at that.
That's just the truth of it.
100%.
I mean, I can't do it all myself. I need these volunteers to come out and be able to deliver the programs and this vision that I have. Because if it's just me, this doesn't happen. This doesn't exist.
100%.
You know, there is no Shine for Education without the community.
You're right. And I firmly believe, now I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I firmly believe that majority of businesses begin this way, with somebody with a vision, and they truly do believe that way, you know, that my staff are more important than me. You know, I want to implement all this, but I need to step away to some degree and actually run this, you know, find the strengths, find the weaknesses in my staff, put them in positions to where they're not only going to fail, but to where the organization as a whole does not fail. I truly do believe that most businesses begin that way. But at some point in the future, I'm hoping you don't lose that mindset. And I don't think that you will. You sound squared away. But I think at some point down the road, a lot of the leaders lose that. And then that's when organizations start to go through law departments, you know, entire departments start to collapse.
Sure.
You know, because the leadership does trickle down, and if you're not feeling that from up top, that's when revolt happens, turnover, burnout, all of that stuff begins to happen when up top loses that.
And I mean, also a big part of that is sometimes I've seen executive suites understand how much potential they have, and they try to eat it all up within the first year of existence. And then they're burnt out. And now all of a sudden, this great project, this great program will no longer exist.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's understanding that if you're wanting to build something that has a long-lasting impact, you know, you're not just building a program, you're building an institution within the community.
And the culture is so important to build, and that
Exactly.
and that what you were saying, I didn't want to cut you off, but that first part you were saying about the whole way you think a business is set up, that's the real recipe of a successful business, honestly. And like you said, to your point, when they stop doing that, that's when you see the decline of that business. And then you got a lot of business owners who feel like, man, I've been doing business for 7 years. We're not doing as good as we were. A lot of times it's just going back to the ground roots, things that you did when you first started,
Back to the
and the same fundamentals, because that never ends, right? The way you treat your staff, the way you hold everyone accountable, your expectations,
Culture and structure.
yeah, putting people in position of their power according to their strengths and accountability on, you know, based on their strengths alone. But that's it. That's I think everyone focusing on their strengths as as a whole, it's kind of like Voltron back in the day. Everyone comes together.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself. You probably don't know.
Voltron, Power
You weren't around
Rangers,
one point.
TMNT.
You weren't born. I don't think around Voltron, but yeah, a bunch of robots are coming together to create one big powerful source. So that's really what business is, in a sense. So yeah, everybody playing their part, the best part.
That's awesome, man. So you're 21 years old.
Yeah.
Right now, and you're already talking like you've gone through a lot of stages of business, of leadership,
Of course.
of
Can we see some ID? I think you're
running-
31, bro.
Yeah.
I think he's pulling our string.
I don't
He's
have it on
got to
me.
be 30
of
something.
working the trenches. I mean, you've done a lot of aspects of the building process.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about you going out of the country to teach some of this curriculum. I'm sure you've gone to more places than just Laos, have you? Or was that the one and only? Or
Right now, the pandemic really impacted my international expansion.
Okay.
I mean,
Everybody's
my organization.
international.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So now I'm actually a member of the Cultural Arts Rotary Club.
Okay.
What we do is we're a bunch of entrepreneurs, businessmen, people that contribute in the community who come together, band together like the Avengers, and we team up on unique special projects. And part of that is to be able to send a couple of representatives from our team over to India.
Wow.
So who knows? You might see me out there.
There you go.
But a lot of that, I understand now at least that this is a long game. This isn't something that when I was doing my programs initially, I thought, okay, I only have till I'm 18. I thought that's when the fun time was going to be over, and I have to figure it out, right? Luckily, I'm able to keep it pushing. But I understand now. Hey, this is like at least 10 years. This is potentially 20 years. This could go 30 years. There's levels to this now.
Yeah.
I talked about it in my PBS mini documentary, about mental health for youth, and how even I was 13 years old when I attempted suicide, right? And how that really impacted how I go about my life nowadays, and again, coming up in this certain type of, I born and raised in Fresno, and there's a lot of, drugs, gang culture that I was exposed to, so there was already this idea like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to make it to 18. Yeah. That's just the reality. I don't know.
Right.
So I'm just going to do everything I can up to that point, once I had this kind of reinvigorated feeling on how I was going to approach my life. I was going to do what I wanted to do, and, what I wanted to do was give back. So that's a bit different now. Yeah.
Is there some things you can talk about what you were going through when you were considering committing suicide? You were 13, you said? That's I'm just curious, that's young, and if you can speak on it, I'd love to hear some of the factors you think that could have led up to it in retrospect,
A big part of it, I would say, I think a lot of kids feel this, is lack of community. I was 13 years old. I was, living, I was a low-income family, right? Going to a high-income school with a bunch of people that I didn't really belong around.
Little outcast. Felt a little like an outcast.
Absolutely. Even, when I was going for, middle school president, right? And even when I got these things, right? Mm-hmm. It was this feeling of like, man, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. Because I think when you're in these situations, and especially with youth, right? These feelings intensify, and and also being in a minority household, not being able to be in a situation to communicate these feelings. I know that was hard to communicate with my parents, our friends, right? Who either didn't know what to do or didn't believe in what I felt, the severity of my situation, right? So. That was just, like I mentioned, being an eternal student, right? It's not just with professional growth; it's personal growth. How do I combat these feelings? How do I deal with the stress of the work I do today? How do you manage that? Because again, I'm pretty young for what I do.
Right.
It's quite a interesting situation where I'm having to deal with these grown feelings. At 21, I mean, how many people my age can you say, hey, you now have the responsibility to teach 300 kids in a single contract, and then have to be responsible for making sure all 20 of your staff, all with their own individual bills, making sure all of them get paid, you know, and then on top of that, you know, having friendships, you know,
Sure.
relationships, right? It's it's a challenge.
I bet I was going to ask you. That was going to be my next question. Like you being so young and the pressure and the responsibilities you have of, you know, the 30, 40-year-old, you know, entrepreneur professional, but you're so young at 21.
Yeah.
It's just, man, I could see that could be a lot to handle at your age, but you seem to deal with it pretty well. I mean, I'm sure has to be something you do to unwind, right? Like I know there's a lot of stresses you deal with all the time, but it's got to be those times. How do you handle the stresses, and then what do you do to unwind?
You know, there's a lot of different aspects. You know, what does it mean to unwind, right? You know, because especially someone like who's in my position, right? I'm not acting just on my own interests, but on interests of groups. So
Right.
there's again responsibilities to kind of always be on the go. But I think honestly, the biggest thing besides, you know, sports, working out, besides all of that, you know, which I do, right, has been, hey, I'm not living till I'm 18. I'm living till I'm like 90 or 100.
Yeah.
It's that
Gotcha.
mindset, you know, like,
Yeah.
hey, something doesn't work out. It just happens like that.
Yeah.
You
got
know, it's not the end of the world. You know, you just have to grow up and take on the responsibility of that, and then you move on.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a big part of it. You know, contextualizing your life outside of
like
these
that.
core years.
Yeah.
Right. And I that's really what it's come down to. Like, hey, you feel like this one day, just wait it out. Just breathe about it. You know, because you know what it may feel like to you, the reality of the situation, it's very different. You
Yeah.
know, I remember I was telling someone who was working under me at the time how, like, oh man, what if this fails, right? And I said, you know, the honest truth about being young and doing these types of projects is that, I mean, how it'll really boil down to the person who's actually going to think about your failure the most is you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're going to be in someone's thoughts one day and out the next. That's really what it comes
Very
down
true.
to. It comes down to how you have your own perception of self.
Mindset.
You know?
What do you do? Do you read books? Do you read inspirational videos? What do you do to keep that motivation, keep going, you know, keep that fuel, that fire burning?
I think that's just being in the community. That's just being local. That's going out. I don't like working in an office. I like working in these, like, you know, these
Yeah.
Starbucks, teasers, whatever, right?
Okay.
You know, I'll go to Irene's and Tower. You know, like, I like being local because I
Yeah.
feel it, you know, and
yeah.
that's what I pull from, you know, a lot of my energy. I pull from the community, you know, in terms of videos and books. Although I read educationally, and things inspire me on saying, oh man, this person is developing something really cool. And that really excites me to see how education is developing in the Central Valley. Like,
For
things
sure.
like that excite me.
Yeah.
But really, that's just what I pull from. You know, I see who the experts are. I see what they're doing. You know, I chat with them. You know, like, there's people I'll just hit up on LinkedIn and say, hey, I don't know you, but I'd really appreciate if you went out and
That's
got Denny's
awesome.
with me.
Yeah,
you know?
that's it. That's
Like-
a lot of people don't do that, and I always tell that, like, if you're young or whatever,
Yeah.
if you're looking, you want to do something, seek out someone in that field. Reach out to them, see how you can help them. Go to lunch, whatever. You'll learn so much that way, just hands-on experience, you know. And believe it or not, a lot of these business owners, entrepreneurs,
They're very receptive.
they love helping out and giving back. But unfortunately, not enough people really reach out. You know, I think a lot of people feel like, oh man, besides intimidation, I think it's also they feel maybe they're bothering that person, or that person will never give them, they're just too busy to even,
Yeah.
you know,
And I
give
think
them
that
a chance.
it even goes into perception of self. You know, how many of these people, you know, think they could also be their own CEO? How many people think they can also be their own president, you know?
There you go.
Like, when I meet with a lot of these people, you know, I mean, even you two, you know, I very much respect everything you've accomplished up to this point. I would say you're a lot further along in your guys' careers than I am. And I very much admire that.
Well,
but
we're
I-
also like 20 years older.
We've had twice as long.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, you know.
But thank you.
But you know, but I also have to walk into the room thinking, like, hey, I can work just as hard as them to get to where they're at, you know, because it's all this kind of core human trait that we all have, of ambition, of commitment to success, and I think when I think about that, I'm always listening with open ears, but I have to maintain like, hey, like I can get there too. And they were where I was at one point. So
they say, don't compare your year 1 to someone's year 20 or year 15, right? That's a lot of people, including myself. I was victim of that a long time, comparing myself, to someone else who's been in the business, and you get, and it just makes you just, get down on yourself. But you got to realize this person had a lot more time and experience into that field and business, and just go at your own pace, just as long as you're being productive and you're having some successes, it's going to get better. Just stick with it. Just time. It's
absolutely.
only time. Time will take it.
And sometimes it's helpful to, if you do compare.
As a
you realize
it can drive you. Competition.
I have only been doing it. I am only this age, and I've done just about everything that organization has, and that's led by a 41-year-old. So maybe I am onto something. Maybe I am doing something right. Maybe I am working my ass off. I mean, that's also too. Also, comparing. It's not always a good thing, but it's not always a bad thing either. Just to kind of gauge.
Right. If you let it like get you down and you feel frustrated, then it's not good. But but for like motivation, and like I did that, I look at someone that's just really doing well. That just makes me want to go that much harder and push harder to get to that goal. But it's all about the person's mindset at the time.
100%.
So, and perspective, right? So, man, like I said, I took a little break. I had to run out, but I don't know everything you guys covered. But before I forget, I want to make sure you get this, buddy, because we give out these shirts, like we said. You are the official Heat speaker now.
That's what I'm talking about.
And
I'm honored.
Look at the back. So it's a Bible verse, Romans 12:2.
God bless.
Yep, and be not conformed to this world, but here you go, my
Thank
friend. You have earned it.
That
Actually,
fits you perfect, man. That fits you perfect. That Bible verse, man. Because
he
had you just stayed in cross country, you might have been conformed to this world.
You might have been
You
something.
are definitely making some changes, man. And
You are.
I saw someone out. I was over at a local summer league game. And I saw someone wearing the shirt, so it's going around.
Okay,
it's going around.
That could have been my wife, but hey, I think you. It's
That's
people like the shirt, so we're getting good feedback. Again, guys, if you're out there, you guys want a shirt, hit us up. We'll tell you how to get one for sure. Go ahead, you got.
Let's shift gears. Unless you have more
I'm good,
on.
I'm good.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So you have your nonprofit. Obviously, you're dedicating a lot of your time to that.
Yes.
Continuing to grow it at a healthy pace. Affecting more and more of the community. Is there anything else that you're involved in that you like, that has become a new hobby of yours, or anything like that just kind of keeps you busy? You seem like a guy that would prefer as little downtime as possible.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can call it a hobby since I get paid for it.
Gotcha.
But I work as the director of marketing and development for SunSource Solar, a local solar company here in Fresno. I was honored for them to give me the position. Not too many 21-year-old directors of marketing and development.
Everything you just told me you do, there's still more time in the day for you to be a director of marketing for a solar company. Oh my gosh.
I find usually the time comes at night, but
I was like, when do you sleep, man? Like, do you ever sleep? Like, goodness gracious, your day is jam-packed. So tell us more.
What was the name of that company again?
SunSource Solar.
Soar like SOAR?
SunSource.
Source.
As in the
Source.
Yes.
SunSource Solar.
Yes, SunSource Solar. I was proud to have joined the team. I actually started when I was working part-time at OfficeMax. I met the chief executive officer, and I gave them my quick 30-second pitch on who I am and what I do. That started at first a sponsorship pitch for my nonprofit, and that turned into a full-time job. So a big part of my responsibility, besides developing materials that can be sent across the Fresno County area, is actually coming up with campaigns. How can I better fulfill the needs of our customer base besides just giving them solar? There's a lot of solar companies that are coming from across the nation here to the Central Valley because the solar industry is really thriving right now.
Right.
How can I better aid my community even in this position as the director of marketing development? How can I show our client base where their money is actually going to? A lot of solar companies are looking to, what it comes down to is a numbers game. Hey, we're just going to send 1 million people out there. We're going to get the money and we're going to leave. But we here at SunSource Solar really believe in reinvesting our profits back into the community. I mean, that goes into partnerships outside of just my nonprofit, but with other organizations here in the Central Valley. I mean, we anticipate on being able to contribute, I believe the number is a bit over $35,000 over by the end of the year to local organizations to be able to further the progress that the Central Valley is already making,
Right.
and showing,
How do they get do they have to apply for the funds? How are they? Do they have to connect? How do they receive the funds or even get like as a what's the word I'm looking for? Recommended. Like how can a company be recommended or even have a chance to get it?
Actually, you can look up FresnosBestSolar.com. It'll redirect right to our website.
Okay.
And we do have more information on the program as well as applications on how to participate.
Gotcha.
We definitely believe in giving back to our community, and we are eyeing a variety of different starting partners, but we do plan on expanding this program on a more consistent and open access basis.
Okay. What was the website again?
So Fresno's Best Solar.
Fresno's Best Solar. You can go apply if you're a business, and maybe you can, get a grant or funds to your donate to your cause.
Yeah, the idea is we want to be able to, by the end of the program, impact or be able to say we funded programs that have impacted thousands of people across the Central Valley and especially Fresno County.
That's awesome.
And then begin expanding on this mission of using solar to give back from there. A lot of solar companies think about the environmental ramifications of it, of course, which we do as well. But a part of that is already going into the construction of our panels.
Right.
We're thinking about, okay, how can we reinvest this?
So make real impact.
Making real impact that you can visually see. I think the big thing about the environment, you can feel it. You can feel this 105-degree weather today. But, I want to be able to show other community members like, hey, this money that you put into saving money on solar, we took that and we just developed 10 different educational programs that are now impacting your youth. And what other company is going to stick their neck out for you like that?
Yeah.
And that goes back into my nonprofit background.
Right. 100%.
Best fulfilling the needs of my community.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
I'm just in a fortunate enough position where I'm in an industry now, such as the solar industry, where I'm afforded the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the source of a lot of your
SunSource
plans.
Solar.
Yeah.
SunSource.
Seems like the sun source of a lot of your ideas, the implementations that you're trying to put into place, stem from your wanting it, your need. It almost feels like a need to give back to your community when I hear you speak. Would you say that's pretty accurate? Like that is like, no matter what you do, no matter what business you start in the future, I would imagine that there's going to be, how does this impact my community in a positive way, is one of the questions before you get going.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely what it seems like.
If I can't figure out how to contextualize my work within the context of my mission, then it doesn't fit. Right. It just doesn't work, and I'm not going to pretend like it does.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different fields that someone with my talents could probably be pretty successful in, but if it doesn't fit, if I'm not able to make it belong in this world of community first development, then it probably isn't the right situation for me. And I think that's something people have to be honest about.
100%. I mean, you got to know your purpose, know what you're about, and they say, as a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, you got to be able to know to say a lot of no's to a lot of things, to stay on your purpose to reach your goal. Because if you say yes to everything, you're just going to be all over the place. You're going to get only a little bit of done. Not the main exactly. So you got to be very clear on what your purpose is, what you stand for, what your what you align with morally and everything like that, and go from there and turn down everything that doesn't line up.
Yeah, and I'm lucky to have developed that over the course of the years through these programs I've created, and that's why I create programs now, to give students that feeling of belonging, but also understanding where they are going to go as, not just as a person, a professional, you name it, right? My vision is to be able able to develop either extracurricular or directly integrated educational programs from elementary to high school, all focused on a variety of different subjects. So the idea is from elementary to high school, I have developed I've taken all this time, only doing maybe an hour or two a week of these programs, focusing on what I love doing. And now I've developed such a large resume. Now I can actually pursue it as a career and pursue the right scholarships, the right college programs for me, right?
Yes.
If I hadn't developed, if I hadn't taught these 1,000+ kids, if I hadn't had this entire background, the reality is I probably wouldn't be let into the doors that I'm in now. And honestly, rightfully so, because I wouldn't have been prepared to take on that kind of responsibility.
There you go.
And the idea for me, I had to really jam pack that into 4 years, right?
Yeah.
I want students to not have to handle the pressure that I have to, where I'm creating the entire environment. I want to be able
to provide it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Minus all the stresses, minus all the uncertainties, minus all the, is this program going to end tomorrow? Is today the last day that I ever learn something like this? Yeah, you're eliminating a lot of that, man, and that's incredible.
Thank you.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
I haven't heard you say a school district that I'm hoping you make it to. Sanger.
Get me in touch.
I will, because that's where my kids go. I went there. I loved that school. I still do. I moved away in my early 20s because I didn't have any kids. When we got pregnant with our son first, and took me all but 2 years to be like, okay, yep, we're moving back, because when he starts going to school, he's going to Sanger. So I'm a Fresno address, but he's going to Sanger, and the school's still amazing, but we don't have anything like that, man. We don't.
Yeah, maybe Elijah could be the one. The guy, and
yeah,
open the door.
I know my son. He just turned 6 last Friday, and he's very, very, he's very in tune, man. He loves school. So just to compound on top of that, man, there's a lot of very capable children out in Sanger, and I really want something like that out there.
What I tell people, right, is if I was willing to personally travel all the way out to the villages of Laos, and I do mean villages, I mean it. Grass. We had to be personally guided to avoid bombs that had been previously left over the war. If I was willing to go out there, man, I'll drive 30 minutes to Sanger.
It's a hop, skip.
Dangerous,
Yeah. Hop, skip, and a jump.
It just, I'll go wherever the opportunity's at for me to be able to implement these types of programs. I'm passionate about it. I believe in it. I've done it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't change much for me. Like, hey, I want to do this in the Central Valley. If the door's open, I'm going through it.
Real quick, just to recap, you probably touched on it. I know you did the robotics. Just for people who just really want to understand, so you bring a curriculum to a school, say Sanger. What are you teaching these kids in Sanger? Like, what are they learning? Is it robotics? And I know you've added other curriculum.
Yes.
So, and also to this, how is it structured in the schools? Is it like, okay, they go to these classes in the morning, then yours is like, is it an after school program? Is it during school? Is it like a lunch? Like, explain, how does that look?
Well, that's also what we're navigating with individual school districts. Although I'm in conversations with some, I'm not allowed to disclose it at this time,
Sure.
business and such. But, some school districts, they might want me to come over summer break and run their entire summer break curriculum, or come over winter break. Another school might want me to come over the course of a semester as an after school program. Another school might want me to take over an already existing period that they have scheduled out, and then they'll make it the Shine period, Shine for Education period, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of interesting ways which I can do my programming. In the past, I've already taught through their after-school program sessions at every single Clovis Unified Elementary School. I've also taught over the course of winter breaks over at Fresno Unified Elementary Schools. I've even partnered with nonprofit organizations such as the Fresno Housing Authority at their local community centers, going over the course of a summer break and teaching my curriculum. If some kids, they go to different schools, it's hard to guarantee complete access. If I'm only available at one school, I'll just go directly to the community center to be able to deliver these programs. I partnered with PBS to do that. There's, again, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm just, where do you want me? If we can get the kids to come out, and I believe we have engaging enough curriculum to do that, and which I'll touch on, then I mean, it really just comes down to, okay, let's fundraise for it. Let's figure out how we can staff everyone for it.
Are these classes, say it's like a summer, program, whatever you're doing?
Yes.
Are these paid by the families to attend? Are they free? Is it funded already? Do the kids just sign up?
I've never charged a single student or family for any of the
That's
programs
amazing.
I've done.
That's amazing.
I
So
don't-
free
That's incredible,
education. It's not even, what would you call it? It's not traditional. It's like, it's extra
I've heard someone call it experiential learning.
interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of, when you get into education, there's a lot of different terms. They might call it STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. That's
Okay,
another thing they
got
call
it.
it. Career-based education. There's,
What is it called in college? When you take your main courses, I can't remember.
they might call it
electives.
cradle.
Electives.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an elective in a sense, I guess. Like it's not your tradition. It's outside your traditional math, reading, history. It's
I have a variety of different curriculum, because again, what I love doing is experimenting outside of the norm. How do I integrate all of these essential concepts also along with career-based learning? A couple of programs I've done what I started off with was a STEAM workshop where we would actually teach coding through a board game where we would roll out this big old mat and we would teach students how to code in sentences to be able to get certain points and whatnot, right? And then I also paired that up with mathematics activities as well, giving them a more comprehensive experience of their education, making sure not only are they being exposed to one subject, but also learning about others as well. Because, think about each of your own individual fields. It isn't just one thing you have to know about.
Sure,
it just isn't. You have to have a wide variety of skills.
yes.
Of course, you specialize in some more than others, but it's a whole wheel that you have to manage.
For sure.
Like, for example, besides just being a realtor and doing lending, you have to understand the business and the marketing aspect of it. You have to figure out how to pull up the laptop, how to put together the soundboard, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a technology aspect of it, that I love being able to teach kids. Besides that, we have a creative writing program where we publish the work of every single one of our students into an officially written book.
Wow, that's awesome.
There's that. We did
I'm getting my kid in there.
Get your kid into his class program right away, guys. If you don't do anything else, seek out, support this man. This is a young gem we have, guys. We're just getting started, but
we
I
did
just got to throw that in there. It's a gem. This guy's going places to be so young, so support everything.
It's funny you said GEM. That was one of the name of my programs.
Oh, man.
It was the first full-length program I did. It's called Girls in Engineering, Mathematics, and Science, GEMS.
Wow.
I did it. I understood that there was, especially in engineering, I found that there's not just a roadblock. Not just for people who don't have access to the programs on a minority level, but also on a gender level for women, being able to create a safe space for women in our community to be able to learn certain aspects, where if they're just thrown out to these wide and open access spaces that are now, they might not be in a safe space to learn.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So that was something, and even though I realized, hey, I can't be the face of that because that isn't right. I'll help develop the structure and curriculum for it, but that has to be someone else. I was able to get all female volunteer and,
That's awesome.
and staff for that.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Talk about creating a safe space.
Yeah, because again, you have to think outside of yourself as well. There is more experiences than what I have experienced.
100%.
And just understanding that kind of core idea, replicating that in different scenarios, changing different variables.
What can we do, and the audience who's just amazed by you, what can the person do that's sitting on the couch, sitting at home, like, man, how can I support? How can I help? How can I volunteer? How can I donate? What can they do to help support what you're doing and to make this thing grow and continue?
The biggest part of that, volunteers, donations. You can do that through Shine, number 4.
What's the Shine for Education?
For education.org. But remember, it's a number 4.
Number 4.
Got
it. So
make it a bit shorter. Besides that, volunteering, we're always looking for experienced individuals to come onto our board. Because again, it takes an army. Right now, we are in the works of finalizing an office space, so then we can have a mini community center to be able to collaborate with our lovely people here in Fresno and beyond. to further take on that next step. Because I mean, up to this point, I remember back in the day, I was a junior in high school, 16. I would all of my curriculum I would carry around in this big brown cardboard box that I had this sticker on with my team's logo, and I would just carry that around.
How did that go amongst the other teens in your school? They was it kind of interesting, or they're like
what's
making
that?
jokes? Yeah. Teenage kids, that's what they do, right?
Yeah,
they don't understand it,
I mean, nobody did. I mean,
they're
not even in a negative way. It's just like,
what are you doing? What?
Yeah, why do you have a cardboard box?
Right?
Yeah. Man, and that was back in the day. I had to walk to schools to teach. I had to walk like 2 or 3 miles if I wanted to go teach a program. I didn't drive. I couldn't even afford a car. So, that's nowadays, I can't operate like that anymore. I need to be able to, with that same passion and hunger, but I don't want to.
But that helped build your character. That is all part of your whole story. That helped build you to where you are now. And when you you do write your first book, because I know you're going to write a book, you're going to have to document everything you've done, because it has to be told. It's so unique, right? And it's never, you don't really see that to be that young. So that is, if you didn't have to go through that, you wouldn't be who you are today.
Yeah, but also
with the. Yeah.
Like I mentioned, it's creating spaces so then the next generations after us don't have to deal with that.
Exactly.
I don't want, I promise none of my volunteers will ever have to deal with that. I don't want them to. I'd rather wait another 2 years and not do a single program than have to force people to do that.
Yeah.
I'm in a fortunate enough position where I get to have a certain certain authority and control over how this organization moves.
Well, you earned it. You did all the groundwork, man.
And if I'm not able to fully staff, get them what they deserve, then I would rather wait. I'll wait until I fund it myself. I've done it before. All those programs, I was paying out of my own pocket. I would go to the Office Depot, the Office Max. I would put the money into the boxes. I would put the money into the materials. I would go out of my way to publicly fundraise for it. If I have to do that again, if I have to go back and pick up a job at Office Max, wherever, and I have to save all that money into the nonprofit, I'll do it again. I can and I will.
Right.
I'm very much uncompromising in how I feel about what I do.
Yeah, we feel it. I'm sure the people at home can feel your passion and your heart is so huge, bro. And I'm sure everyone at home watching it could see your passion, your vision, your heart. It just exudes so much, man. Your energy. And you're going to do that and exceed, and life's just going to take you in so many places if you just keep doing what you're doing. Because, it's something that you're doing. It's amazing. It's great. God loves everything. I'm sure as far as what you've told us you're doing, that's what life's about. Yeah. Helping people, working together, community, building community together for the great benefits. It's everything you've said. So. I'm actually, inspired by you, big time.
Big time.
Yeah, definitely. You're a big inspiration to. It's nothing about age. It's all about what people are doing and their actions. Actions speak volumes, right? And you're walking the walk and talking the talk. So that's amazing.
Well, look at the work you guys are doing. Look at this. You guys don't get to see it. This bougie office. It's all done up. I was on the way in. They had this custom high-tech water cooler, and I was like, man, they're doing it up over here.
No, we're just,
Hey, we're trying, man. We're trying.
Yeah. I just, like I said, it's all about your vision, your passion, and everything. It's a blessing, man. Again, you do whatever you're doing, everything you're doing, man.
I don't see fundraising stop. I don't see disbelief creeping in to you, your team, or your community. So that's important. It starts from the top. The leader doesn't believe in himself. The leader can't, get his team to believe. There's no way nobody else is going to buy into your product, and it's not even a product. You're not selling it to anybody. You're teaching it. You didn't charge anybody a dime. I thought that was powerful.
Powerful,
when you
guys.
said that on this podcast. I think that was extremely powerful.
Before we go, you got to ask them that question too.
I do have one question on your nonprofit.
Yes.
Any idea? Maybe you haven't thought about it. Maybe there's other circumstances that go along with it. But any idea or thoughts about taking your curriculum and making it a part of like a homeschool?
Yeah, actually,
or a full curriculum.
It's funny you mentioned that. That we've been approached on smaller levels for that. But, it just sort of comes down to opportunity, I suppose, whatever is right to be able to go that route, because that does require a certain amount of funding. I have to work with curriculum developers, I mean, I'm at a point I can't just focus only on curriculum development and teaching it. I have to kind of, not only distribute the workload, but also understand there's people that are smarter than me in certain subjects, right? So there's costs that go into that. But I mean, like, I would. I mean, again, I'll whatever I can possibly do to develop this curriculum and spread it out as much as I possibly can, I will do it. It's just the right scenario. If someone,
That's awesome, man.
If someone were to come to me tomorrow and say, hey, 50 grand to develop this curriculum you're asking of me right now, I'll do it in a heartbeat. And I can say that confidently because I run the organization and I know what would go into that. Yeah. I mean, that's how it goes with these school district contracts. It's a matter of just me meeting someone and they say, hey, I want you to do this for this amount. Yeah. And then it happens, Yeah. It's not as complicated. I mean, of course, there's the work that goes into it, but, I think I've learned at a certain point business is business, just the variables change and the timelines change, So, I mean, if there's anybody looking to fundraise or fund a project like mine, the thing is I'm not even in the hopes, I'm not trying to have a million different funders, although I'd love that. Right. If I could just partner with like a singular entity and just keep it pushing from there, I mean, I would. I love what I do, and whatever is the right scenario to build a safe enough situation for this organization to develop, as well as the programs that fall under it, I am all for. I mean, we're ready. We have the website, we have the programs, we have the curriculum. I can email it. I will go out of my way to meet with you in person. I don't care, where you're at. Like I'm here. Yeah. And until then, I'm going to be here, and I'm still going to figure it out.
That's again. Awesome, dude. That's awesome. Yeah. One final question on your mindset, and then I'll let you ask the final.
Okay.
With what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Any thoughts in the future of running for an office position? You just strike me already. You strike me already. Yeah. As I mean, you're community oriented.
I'd rather have you as a president than we have right now. But that's a whole different story.
You're Elijah 2024.
You're
Elijah
for,
2024.
Right. You're for the community, man. But you're clearly doing a lot of things right now that probably isn't making you a millionaire like a lot of people in office may or may not become and not necessarily benefit the community. So you are on the hero side of that arrangement, not yet corrupted, it sounds like, anyways, to me. So I thought it was a natural question to ask. Is that something that you
see mayor, huh?
I don't know if I'm qualified.
Well, maybe not, but
what was
you definitely got the mindset, but have you considered that before?
I think a lot of it goes into learning, learning more about different ways for me to impact my community. That's why I joined the Cultural Arts Rotary Club, to figure out, interacting with other businessmen, learning more about entrepreneurship, on how I can impact the community. At some point, inevitably, that is going to get into politics, right? The idea of, hey, if I want certain funding allotted to my programs, that means working with certain congressmen or even on the local level, district officers who are council members, I believe is the term, that are in positions to make an impact, right? And that's actually kind of another evolution that I've experienced with these programs, interacting with, these kinds of people in positions of authority. And I suppose it is, in a way, inevitable, on some type of level, right? I don't know where that might take me,
And honestly, to touch on that, I don't think a lot of people, they have it in their mind they're going to be mayor one day. I think it's just organically, just by what they're doing, and eventually, over time, like he said, he gets more experience. He's interacting with these officials, and as he moves up and meets more people in politics here on a local level in government, it could be a natural progression at that point. At some point, like, what, it just makes sense. But I think it'll happen more.
Damage the integrity.
Yeah, I think it'll happen organically over the years. And
well, I think the people will far decide that before I ever
very
will.
true.
I mean, that's just how it's gonna go.
Just,
I a lot of my decisions again are very reactionary. Like, hey, there was a need. There's a point where I was only teaching in schools. Then there was a reaction or an opportunity for me to work outside of schools, working with the Fresno Housing Authority. So that turned into me doing that. Oh, there was a reaction or an ask or request for me to do it internationally. So I went and did that. Again, it's I can only control the core mission and concept of what I believe in, is developing these types of curriculum and giving back to the community. And then everything from there is really it's a reaction.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And then I sort of just move from there and how I build.
That's awesome.
Amazing, man.
That's awesome.
All right,
Rich, go ahead, man. I'm done with my questions, or we'll be here all night.
Yeah, we could be here all night with this man. This guy is very amazing. So before we go, we ask every guest this question, and it was interesting. We talked about this off camera, but let's see what you come up with. We asked this question: who are your top 3 hip hop artists of all time?
Of all time?
And you said before people didn't realize you were into hip hop that you love hip hop.
I could go
right?
into that forever. So
dead or alive?
Dead or it doesn't matter.
Dead
or alive. It doesn't matter. Your top 3. Do
just
you have a top 3?
To preface this, right? I mean, when I wear the suits, when I get the tie and whatever, and then because I did the STEM and the nerdy stuff, right? People think like I've had people say like, "Oh, I thought you only listened to classical music, right? I thought you were listening to like Beethoven Symphony, you know?"
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Like
too, right?
I rock with it,
Yeah, right.
But like people forget, like I'm born and raised in Fresno. I grew up listening, to E40 and the Game, busting from the speakers, right? Because that's how it is being from the West Coast.
100%.
That's what we like. Yeah,
I know a little. I know a little bit of everything, right? Especially when it comes to rap music. I have to start off with Kendrick Lamar. A big part of
solid.
a big part of intellectualizing, this community mission was coming from listening to Good Kid, Mad City, to Pimp a Butterfly, right? Songs like Sing About Me, I'm Dying to Thirst, where he was talking about, how these people that fell into bad habits ended up living their lives in comparison to him, right? So having that at a young age, that came out when I was in elementary, and hearing that, like, oh, okay, that helped me get it a little bit, right?
Okay.
From there, man, that's hard. It depends what we say all the time, but speaking to my heart, like I love the Game.
The Game.
Another West Coast rapper, the documentary 2 classics.
Yes.
He dropped a lot of albums over the years.
I feel the Game doesn't get enough recognition as he should.
Well, he was like in this middle point in between the eras of the Pac.
Yeah.
He was in that middle 2000s.
He filled that little void, like
50
50 Cent and Game right after, and then he represent that West Coast. But
it's very much like if you aren't from the West Coast, then then you don't think about it. But if you are, you have to think about it.
For sure.
You have the mantle.
Yeah.
And then I'll do like being my age, like. I'm a big Drake fan, right?
Okay.
You have to be.
Solid.
Believe it or not, Drake is not an uncommon one to be on the top 3.
Oh no,
Yeah.
He's on a lot of people.
If you go back and you listen to the show, and you can skip to the end because that's where we always ask it. I think Drake has been mentioned as a top 3 on the show
several times.
maybe
Yeah,
3
I
times
feel.
already.
But if we're talking like GOAT too, you got to throw Jay-Z, Nas, Illmatic, still a
Illmatic.
classic.
Illmatic.
What do you know about Illmatic, man?
I know a lot.
Oh, he knows it. He knows
I
it.
know Illmatic, and he's been dropping great albums in the past 3 years. He's on a good little run. Not a lot of rappers his age.
Man.
Because again, hip hop's relatively young musically.
Yeah.
Just 50 years. It just had the 50-year anniversary this year.
Yeah.
They were selling. That's crazy.
So
it's virtually new.
Yeah.
On a different topic, but it's just amazing how time. In 1970, I just seen a little clip of a documentary. In 1970, right? It was a video that they were showing how it was well, this is a little off of the music topic. It was on more of just in 1970 is when they were showing a city in Texas. I think it was Houston. the first time blacks were allowed to integrate with the whites in a school. And I just seen like a little clip of that, and they were interviewing the kids and some of the parents. You know, they were going to it was a white girl. They're like, hey, how do you feel about, you know, now going to school with blacks? And we're talking 1970, bro, just 53 years. So it just shows how like integration and us, you know, by cultures and races it's not that old. I mean, if you really think about it, and especially when I was a kid, you know, coming up, I mean, it was only maybe 15 years, you know, that it was really schools are being integrated like that. And blacks and whites were going to school together, interacting. It was just crazy. So I don't know, for a lot of times in our mind, we feel like it was so long ago, right? We feel like it was years and ages, but no, it really was not that long ago.
Yeah, even speaking on that, I have a community partner. She's from Chicago. She was around, like she was alive, a young girl, when the Emmett Till situation happened.
Oh, wow. Well, that was what, in the 60s? Yeah.
So again, you know.
I mean, shoot. Yeah, I think it was something around there.
Yeah.
That wasn't too long ago.
And again, still within reach of conversation.
Right.
Yeah. Like I can just text her, I call her, and ask her questions on on this entire era.
Because you read it in books and things like that, and we talk about it, but people just feel like, oh, that's like hundreds of years ago. It just feels like it is, but no.
Yeah. Well, and I think a big part of that, especially in the context of Fresno, is being able to experience that.
It was 1955. I'm sorry,
1955.
Emmett Till. Yeah,
man.
1955. So again, I mean, you know, it wasn't like that. You know, it was a while ago, but it wasn't probably as far as people think.
Not at all.
You know?
Not at all. We're, I mean, in a very interesting point of like human history, right? I mean, so much development happening. Man, it's hard to say where it's gonna go next, but
we got to bring you back, man. I feel like it's so much we can go on about.
It's hard to say where it's gonna go next, but one thing's for sure. Elijah will be bumping K-Dot. Mandatory.
Yes, he
K-Dot.
will. Yes, sir.
Pimple
Yes,
Butterfly.
sir. Man.
Blasted.
There you go. Make sure you
Definitely gotta
guys
bring him back.
Yeah,
that was a great show.
Great
man.
show.
A lot of information coming out to the community that you're living in, if you're here in Central Valley.
Look, if a 21-year-old could do what he's doing, there's no excuses for anyone to do a piece of what he's doing, right? And just focus and just live your dream, man. Go for what you know deep down you're meant to do.
Find that passion.
Find that
passion.
And don't let no one tell you can't do it. It can't be done. Don't let anyone distract you, right? Just go for it, and you'll be successful every time. Just stay with it.
Thank you for having me. Very honored.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Our pleasure, my man.
Absolutely. You got to come back. Good show, brother.
Heat speakers,
right.
baby. Rock the shirt.
Tuning in.
Boom.
Thank you for tuning in.
Let's go, guys.